Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Giulio Bonnici. Joining me today is Sam Vassallo. It's Women's Day. We've got a really special video sort of celebrating the day. It's in partnership with V Squared, with the help of V Squared, and it will show you to you at the end of this show. Today's headlines are as follows. Former Malta Gaming Authority head charged in court. MTA head told Jorgen Fenech he would do business with him. Police issue fines over Harm Spartans' victory celebrations. Malta's rape and sexual assault survivors share their heart-wrenching stories, and calls for more enforcement to ensure hotel restaurants are obeying the rules. We've also got a really special guest today. At the end of the show, we'll be interviewing Keith Demicoli. You'll all know him from your TV screens. Delivering the news almost every night. He's recently stepped down from the road, so it's going to be really interesting to sort of speak to him and get his insights, on what he's got coming up next and his experience, on Malta's TV screens, really. On to our first story. The former CEO at the Malta Gaming Authority, Heathcliff Farrugia, has been charged in court with a litany of offences related to his relationship with Jorgen Fenech, the main suspect in the Daphne Caruana Galizia investigation. So this was revealed by Times of Malta this morning. They said he was actually charged in January 2021. So there's actually quite a lot of questions raised about why this story was sort of kept undercover for so long. For those of you who don't remember, Heathcliff Farrugia actually resigned in October. He had told Lovin Malta it was because he was moving onto the private industry. However, it later emerged that he was actually questioned by police over several WhatsApp conversations he had with Jorgen Fenech. Today it's been revealed that those conversations include sort of information on rival casinos and even a money laundering investigation into Portomaso Casino. Portomaso Casino is owned by Jorgen Fenech's Tomas group. So this is obviously one of many controversial WhatsApp conversations Jorgen Fenech was having with some of Malta's very top officials. That we already know that there was a secret WhatsApp group between himself, Joseph Muscat, and Keith Demicoli. We also know that there was over 700 messages shared with Justice Minister Edward Zammit Lewis, and there were also messages with Pierre Portelli, which Lovin Malta covered quite extensively. It's 100% clear what Heathcliff Farrugia has been charged with. However, it appears that it's got to do with trading in influence charges. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only story this week about WhatsApp conversations. That's our second story. On to you, Sam.
Indeed, it just seems like another day, another fresh piece of evidence of government colluding with the private sector. So it's emerged that Malta Tourism Authority CEO Johan Buttigieg said that he would be willing to do business with Jorgen Fenech, the prime suspect of the Daphne Caruana Galizia murder and business mogul. So at the time, this was in 2019, he was the executive chairman of the planning authority, and he allegedly got the blessing from his sheikh, Joseph Muscat, to do business with him and take over a massive property development over from Joseph Portelli. Now, our Prime Minister Roberto Bella has said previously in November that he thinks it's unacceptable for people in government to be colluding with the private sector. Let's see if he actually believes that, and we'll open an investigation into this and put his money where his words are, so to speak.
Yes, quite a controversial story. Johan Buttigieg has long been a controversial figure, from going to the planning authority to going to the MTA. He was actually the man responsible to giving Konrad Mitzi a lovely €80,000 job soon after he was made to resign in disgrace, really. There's also been some other updates regarding, some, let's say, government corruption and issues regarding like that. Over the weekend, there was also a story that Keith Demicoli and Adrian Hillman are going to be charged in a number of weeks following the conclusion of an inquiry. We're not sure what they've been charged with, but the main gist of the story is that Keith Demicoli transferred about $650,000 to Adrian Hillman between 2011 and 2015. Hillman was the managing director at Allied Newspapers, which owns Times of Malta. Over the same period, Hillman had also deposited €100,000 into a bank account. So we'll see obviously how that's going to be developed. We'll keep track of it and let you all know about the latest updates. On to our next story. Police have fined 12 for breaching COVID-19 regulations. As as part of the Hamrun Spartans celebrations over the weekend. They caused quite a lot of controversy. We've all seen the videos of Hamrun Spartans fans celebrating in the streets. I mean, literally just a few days, after Prime Minister Robert Abela announced a slew of new measures, and in effect closing restaurants, snack bars and kiosks. It seems that the people over there are going to be fined between like €200 as according to regulations. We'll obviously see how this develops. The Spartans fans actually went to celebrate after beating Valletta 3-0 in quite a crucial tie as Hamrun sort of start making their way to win the league for the first time since 1991. Over the weekend as well, Joseph Portelli has also become the club's president, so they're on the onwards and upwards trajectory. However, they're landing in a lot of hot water and controversy over their celebrations, over their victories.
Look, perhaps I'm biased because I really I am very indifferent to football. But you know what? When this happened, when COVID-19 started with the Floriana celebrations, if action was taken then, maybe this wouldn't have happened today. So let's just leave it at that, shall we? So on to our next story, a very a tense one actually. So nearly 1,000 people have shared their stories of sexual assault or rape with Lovin Malta through a far-reaching survey. So men, women, non-binary people all came forward to share the stark realities of what they have to go through and the trauma that it's left. So just a few stories that came out of it. We've had a woman in her 20s detail how she was raped by a friend in the car while another one was driving. It's also very apparent that it also affects men as well. We often think that men can't be victims of sexual assault. It is far from the case. One man actually detailed how he was abducted and raped. Luckily, he's one of the very few who actually found justice, and the perpetrators are serving a lengthy jail sentence. Another one, a woman described being raped by her uncle when she was a child, and her family not believing her because she actually divulged this information a few years after. Now, the whole purpose of this was basically we believe that sexual assault survivors deserve a platform. Malta deserves its own Me Too moment, and I think it just kind of shines a light on the fact that even though we have good laws and things from rape to catcalling and whatever are crimes in our law, it begs the question that maybe we need stronger enforcement. Maybe such crimes should not be time-barred.
It's some really sad, really horrific stories, of survivors of the abuse they went through and the attacks they went through. As Sam mentioned, this is part of quite a wide-ranging Lovin Malta investigation into sexual abuse in the country. We've had close to 1,000 replies from everyday men, women and non-binary people about the attacks they've faced. This is going to be part of a series of articles over the next few weeks covering all kinds of assaults and harassment in the country. Today, almost a bit part of Women's Day, really, we're releasing an article, a really helpful explainer, got to do with consent laws and harassment, so everybody out there can sort of know their rights when it comes to Malta. So please keep in tune and please read the articles over the next few weeks, and importantly the one of today too. On to our last story. It's got to do with some calls for more enforcement to ensure hotel restaurants are obeying the rules. So this obviously comes after Prime Minister Robert Abela and the health authorities really announced some new regulations. Basically, they closed restaurants, kiosks and snack bars, but kept restaurants inside hotels open for hotels for hotel residents only. Naturally, this is Malta, so many hotels have already started to find loopholes around the system. I've been seeing, all over social media, some people offering free hotel stays for a meal at the restaurant, or offering like a €10 check-in to have the luxury of eating at the restaurant. Yes, Lovin Malta spoke to MHRA President Tony Zara about it, and at the end of the day, he said, it's up to authorities to enforce those rules, right? They've put those rules in there for a reason. I mean, really sort of implying as long as, if police aren't enforcing these rules, then really are these operators breaking the law? I'm not really sure. They're definitely not breaking the law, but it's a bit of a funny way to sort of find a loophole and exploit a system when really we should all be being just like a little bit more careful because of COVID-19. I know, like at our office, actually, you know, we're just us two today and just a few other people, you know, with so many people working at home. You know, we're just here, you know, and hopefully, you know, things can get better.
Just the last push, guys. That's it. You know, we can eat at restaurants very, very soon. Don't worry.
Yes, I mean, the vaccine rollout is moving at a steady pace. Like, just be a little bit patient, and hopefully we'll get there somewhere. So that's it from me, at least today. Up next, we've got our interview with Keith Demicoli, but just before then, we've got a Women's Day video which we did with V Squared. Take a look, and happy Women's Day to everyone.
Pull yourself together. Women need to know their place. Girls can't play sports. Football's a man's game. You play like a girl. Women are weak. Man up. You're too loud. Shh. Don't be hysterical. Miskina, it must be her time of the month. What? Be seen but not heard. Smile. You look prettier when you smile. You're too curvy. You're not curvy enough. Why are you so thin? You're not a real woman. Don't wear that. You're asking for it. Cover up. Women don't belong in politics or boardrooms. Women belong at home. How do you take care of your kids with that career? Why don't you have kids? The clock is ticking. Own your place. Break boundaries. Be loud. Be proud. Be you. Happy International Women's Day.
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. I'm joined by Sam Vassallo, the very talented Sam Vassallo, I must say. Very good morning to you, Sam. How are you?
Good morning, Keith. With a little bit of a different introduction this morning. Yes, we have Keith Demicoli, the person who's been on your screens for so long, introducing the news on TVM. So, Keith, you were a TVM journalist for nearly 2 decades, 14 years. You started in 2008. Now you're moving on to, Chamber of Commerce, to new adventures. So let's talk about your time in journalism. What was it like to tell the news to the Maltese for so long?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm honestly, it's not like a cliche, but honestly, I'm privileged and honored that I had this opportunity to not only work as a public broadcaster, but even for so long, for more than 2,000 news broadcasts every single evening, almost for 9 years or so. Because for the past 9 years I did it almost constantly, regularly, on a daily basis. It is amazing because you're like the voice of the nation, or at least the TV voice of the people, if I can put it that way. So being in such a privileged position, it's surely amazing. It's not about the fame and the popularity, mind you, that comes with it, and it is glamorous, it is flattering to see people anywhere you go. Hi Keith, tal-aħbarijiet, Keith, tal-aħbarijiet, as if. But it's making a connection with people, and sometimes it's a meaningful connection that brings other stories and other opportunities. So that's the most amazing thing about being on the front line of the TV screens for so long. It is amazing, and I'm really grateful and blessed that I had such an opportunity.
And what were you could just pinpoint some of the biggest stories that you've covered in your career?
Oh, geez. No, telling people stories was by far the most amazing thing about my career as a news journalist, because I'm still going to be remain involved, heavily involved in the media sector, because that's part of me, because I love to make connection with people, and even the new role will allow me to remain heavily connected with people and remain like a communicator and a connector with people. So the most impactful stories that I had very recently during the COVID pandemic, I happened to meet 72-year-old Zaren Borch. Some stories come incredible how you come across some stories. I bumped into this guy, one of his 2 sons, and he was telling me that his father just returned home after 6 weeks at Malta Day. He was for 3 weeks on a ventilator in ITU, and all the medical staff at Malta Day said it was only a miracle that he survived. And seeing him back at home after almost 6 weeks at Malta Day in such a critical condition, I said to myself, I need to interview this guy, because he is possibly the face of COVID. And even the medical staff at Malta, I spoke to one of them. They told me he's a miracle. I don't know how he survived because there was no vaccine at the time. This was last May. So definitely. Another impactful story was back in 2016. I had discovered through a contact that there might have been a very macabre discovery in Zabbar, in an old house in Zabbar in a narrow alley. And I figured out there was this 73-year-old Ronnie Stafrach, if I remember, I vividly remember his name. Yes, it's Ronnie Stafrach. And he was a lonely person for a few months. And his hungry dog, it's a traumatic experience for the family and even for me recalling that story, but he was found dead. His dog survived, but in a very difficult circumstances. Why he survived, this dog? Because he was eating the corpse of this Ronnie Stafrach. And that story prompted a national discussion on loneliness. Because I love social stories, and that was an impactful story on me and hopefully on the nation to speak about loneliness.
I mean, you've touched on a lot of aspects of what it is to do our job. You know, you do it to connect with people, to be a voice for those who might not have a voice.
Exactly.
And there's also, you know, the tough parts of the job where you have to discover unfortunate things like this. So, I mean, if that's not a promotion for the job, I don't know what is.
No, it is.
So, what do you think, you know, doing this for so long and speaking to the Maltese people, what do you think resonates, what kind of stories resonate the most with Maltese people, do you find?
No, definitely these kind of stories resonate the most with the Maltese people. They are the most stories. It's not interviewing, with all due respect, politicians, but interviewing ordinary people, telling their ordinary stories, everyday stories. So that's definitely the most resonating stories that people connect with my stories and with your stories, with every journalist working on different stories. So definitely social, personally stories, human stories, finding a human aspect in each story. That gave me a kick in my job, in my daily job. It's going like back in 2008, soon after I joined the national TV, I said to myself, this is a huge platform which I have to exploit even more, because they've got a huge audience, a huge following. Facebook was still in its infancy back then. There wasn't Lovin Malta, so competition wasn't big that much. So people had to somehow follow the news to remain somehow informed with what's happening and the current affairs and so on and so forth. So I vividly remember going there in late January 2008 for the very first time. And I said to myself, I promised to myself, I need to make the most of this opportunity. And soon after, there was the election campaign for the 2008 election, which actually it was today, some 8 years ago, right? Yeah, exactly. So I said to myself, okay, I need to make the most of it. How? By trying to be as professional as possible and as humane as possible. So I was asked to follow this new party, which I can mention. It's Azione Nazionale, because now it's gone, but it was founded by Josie Muscat and Andrew Schwirep, if not mistaken. It was quite a far-right party, but I was asked to follow their press conferences. It's not like following the Nationalist or the Labour Party press conferences during the election campaign. But notwithstanding, I used to go to these press conferences on a daily basis. Many often, I'm the only journalist reporting them because no one had any interest in following Azione Nazionale. And one day, soon after in a press conference, I overheard one of the co-leaders, Josie Muscat, saying that he wanted to meet Dom Mintoff. And I said to myself, meeting Dom Mintoff on the eve of an election, why on earth is he going to meet Dom Mintoff, like such a huge politician, like a huge personality? So I went back to the office, to the newsroom. I found Dom Mintoff Tarshin. I called him. I told him, hi, it's Keith Demicoli. Of course, he had no idea, clue who I was or something. I told him, listen, are you considering running with Azione Nazionale for the next election? And But he didn't even say no or yes. He didn't confirm. He was a bit like edgy, like he was somehow he was going to say yes, but then suddenly he said no. I said, there's a story in it. So that's why there was the big story the day after when he called me in the newsroom. He asked me to go there. But you know what? It's just because there was somehow a connection. There is an interest in trying to do something, trying to follow a lead, because that's our job, following leads.
And leads are bridges to new stories, and that's
That's
quite memorable.
No, it is.
It was the very beginning of your career. And talking about your career, if you could think, were there any low points of it, low moments?
Low moments, possibly the last few months. Mm-hmm. Knowing that when I was contemplating on my own, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Do I want to retire as a news anchorman, as a news journalist, as a TV news journalist? Knowing that the media landscape is changing dramatically. Lovin Malta is a confirmation of this, because it's the face of how the media landscape it's changing in such a dynamic way. So I said to myself, I guess I need to move on, because of moving on. I know it's very challenging, it's scary to move on. I'm almost 40, so making such a big leap during this period of my life, it's of course scary, but it's part of growing personally and professionally. So that's why I said I have to take the plunge and try to move on. I know I'm going to miss not being on the screens and in the living rooms of so many Maltese families every evening, but I can still make a significant contribution with business people, employed people, because these businessmen, which I'm going to brush shoulders with, are people who are creating job opportunities for our families and for our children. So helping them is still going to be a meaningful experience for me. So all the wisdom, knowledge, experiences, resources, context that I managed to gather over the past 2 decades, I'm sure I'm going to make use of them in this new road. So the past few months have been very difficult, trying to figure out what I really wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve out of my life, because we all want to change the world. I guess you want to change the world in your small way, being a journalist. And I figured out that we might have ambitious projects and ideas and dreams, but we can still make a small contribution to all that. So now I came to realize that I have to move on and possibly make a new contribution in a different area.
My last question for you, Keith. So, state broadcaster, you've been involved for so long. You probably know Lovin Malta has our constitutional case against political parties and their lack of impartiality and using their stations for propaganda. Do you think that the national broadcaster is impartial? And if so, why?
So that's a very difficult question, and you know that. And I worked with both political parties before. I started with one and then moved to NET, so I worked with all of them.
So if anyone can tell us anything, it's you.
Yeah. So it's a very hard and challenging question, because I know that they have their own bias and they're part of the propaganda machine of the political parties. Do I subscribe to their news bulletins and the way they report? 90% not. I don't subscribe to how they sometimes doorstep politicians or the way they spin the news. But everyone tries to spin news and manipulate news. Let's say, even I personally, I did that. You tell me your story, and I just focus on one aspect of that story instead of another aspect which you might wanted to focus on. So that was my own bias. So it's a very challenging question to answer. If the media landscape, if the state broadcaster and the TV station, the political parties are impartial, definitely not 100% impartial. There is a huge room for more impartiality. My suggestion for the public broadcaster, if I may, is for the main political parties to possibly come out with a proposal in their forthcoming electoral manifesto. If they truly want to have an impartial, independent, as objective as possible newsroom and news bulletin and news portals, I guess the governance of PBS needs to be overhauled. So not only the people appointed, but possibly to somehow work on not giving too much power to the politicians who are in power, to the executive, in appointing people, Sam, Keith, in running PBS. So I know it's difficult because in Malta, the size of the country, the population, it is what it is. So having said that, but I strongly believe that we should, BBC is not but it's possibly the ideal scenario, possibly the governance on who governs and who controls PBS. It shouldn't be the government or the Nationalist Party or whoever is in opposition, but it should be more independent.
Very interesting proposal. So that's all from us on Lovin Daily. This was Keith Demicoli, joined by me, Sam Vassallo. Have a day full of lovin'.